Hello friends and travel buddies, I'm Kate and welcome back to It Came From a Vlog. Today I am taking you with me as I go start the production of a short documentary series going on ABC and PBS. If you already watched my blog, Exploring Indianapolis, Indiana, then you know that that's where I am to produce this. This is my second day here in Indy and I am so excited to take you along with me and show you some of the behind the scenes of the production. So whether you're here because you're curious about what a producer does, or wondering how those weird little documentaries that you see on TV are made, or if the YouTube algorithm just threw me in your face, or if you're a friend of mine that just wants to come hang out for a day, or is hate watching, let's do it. You know people be hate watching. That's just that's a fact of life. I see you haters. Love ya. Thanks for the algorithm boost. Okay, but let's do it.
We're gonna jump right into it. This was our first shoot location, and as you can see, our amazing videographer Aaron is setting up the camera for the first interview of the day, and our audio engineer Dan will be setting up the boom mic in a bit. I always help bring the equipment inside, but usually leave the artists to their work with setting things up because they like things a particular way and they do it really fast. They don't really need my help anyway. You want me to switch out the chair? The black chair in there?
Yeah, I think that, yeah.
Okay. So the back doesn't stick out so much. Gotcha. While we're getting set up, let me tell you a little bit about what I do and how I got into this. Like I said in the intro, I am a producer. This is one of the many hats that I wear because I'm a freelancer and the majority of my work is writing projects. I do a lot of blog writing, social media for different companies, copywriting and email marketing, stuff like that. This is just another one of my clients that I happen to produce for. The company is called Life Focused Communications and it is run by Mona Hanine. We've been working together for about 5 years now, and she is much more than a client to me. She is honestly a really good friend. Another beautiful day. They're setting up inside, and I think Mona is arriving. We had a lot of time to set up today because she was on her way arriving separately. As you can see, she is pulling up right now. Mona has won 5 Emmy Awards and she is one of the most fun and chaotic and wonderful people that I know. It's always an adventure being with her and we have fun on these shoots. One of my favorite shoots with her was in New York City when we decided to do a 45-minute walk to see Times Square in the middle of the night, and 45 minutes back, we got back at 2 a.m. It was so cold, it took forever, but it was totally worth it just for the memories. I have helped plan and produce quite a few different shoots at this point. We did a whole series of visits to Philadelphia for a documentary project there a few years ago, and now we're working on this series which is being developed for PBS and ABC. The series is called Twist of Faith, and we've already produced one of the episodes which involved planning a shoot in California where we visited Rick Warren, the author of Purpose Driven Life. It was one of my favorite shoots ever. I have to tell you guys about it sometime. He had the most amazing library. If you love books, you would have died. But let's talk about this particular shoot. The episode that we're working on during this visit in Indy is called Unbridled Hope. The whole series is a faith-based documentary series, and each of the stories shares some of the unexpected ways that God works in our lives, including sometimes tragic or even traumatic events, and how they can still inspire and give us hope and comfort during dark times. But in this episode, Unbridled Hope, we're doing a story of 2 women, and it is really sad. I could just read you the showrunner information, but I'm going to give you my version of the story, and I'll share more details as I show you more through this video, and you kind of get to meet the different people involved. The first woman in the story is named Michelle, and it is actually her mother's house that we're at right now. And we're setting up today to interview her mother. Her name is Joy, and her sister Kathleen. But Michelle loved to ride horses. It was her passion. And when Michelle was a teenager, she had a best friend as a girl, and her name was Dawn. That's the second woman in our story. Dawn and Michelle, they shared the same passion for horses and riding. In fact, they even shared a horse at one point, and that horse's name was A Gift of Love. Their parents ended up moving away, and eventually Dawn and Michelle lost touch. They each grew up, and tragically, Michelle lost her life after a car accident, and Dawn also lost her life as well. Her husband was her abuser and tormentor, and eventually her murderer. He also shot her mother, and she survived, and you're gonna meet her later in this video. And there's a lot more to the story, especially Dawn's, so I promise to tell you the rest of it later. But first, let's listen to this interesting story that Mona told about one of the shoots that she was on in the past.
Someone needs to, so I went by myself, and I had this cute little pink, and I went with my little, and went to all these cafes and whatever. Do you know any of the miners? No, we don't know the miners. So I looked at myself, and I went to Walmart, and I bought a t-shirt and jeans, and wore it. And then I went into cafes. Do you know the miners? Oh yeah, we know the miners. So they did not want to talk to someone dressed up and whatever. So I got to know all the miners before I brought in the crew.
So did they rescue the miners?
The miners there were 9 miners, right? I don't know if you remember, Dan, the story. There were 9 miners. And this was a national story. They were trapped in a coal mine.
Were you there while they were trapped, or?
No, this was afterwards.
Okay.
They were trapped for 3 days.
That must have been so scary.
And
Perfect.
and some of them were writing their.
Did you interview them when they came?
I interviewed.
That's so cool.
We interviewed 4 or 5 of the 9 miners, but
This is what I told them.
but they were writing their, they knew they were going to die.
I'm sure.
But what they had no idea is that they made a special drill. They had to get this special drill from another
To get them out.
to get them out.
Yeah.
And it was very dangerous because if you drill, it could collapse.
I thought that was an interesting story that she shared about the miners. But as we get ready to start filming the first interview, let's talk more about producing and what a producer actually does. Our first interview of the day was with Michelle's mom, Joy. You can see her here. And Mona acts as the executive producer, and she also asks the questions during the interviews. She prepares the questions in advance and has a general vision of what the episode will be about, but she's also kind of a fly by the seat of her pants type, and she likes to let the interviews go where they naturally lead. She's a really good mentor. I learn a lot from watching her, and one of the main roles the producer plays in a production like this, where interviews are a big part, is this interview process. It's not just about asking questions, it's really the art form of conversation. You have to know when to lead and talk and when to sit back and listen, and you have to make the person that you're talking to feel comfortable enough to open up to you, even though there's a camera sitting right there, and it can be very intimidating for a lot of people. Developing that rapport starts way before you sit down to do the actual interview. I don't know if you noticed, but when we came in, she gave Joy a big hug, and while she is kind of a friend of the family, it really starts the moment that you meet them, and you can see she has a very warm personality that makes people feel comfortable. That's something that I personally need to work on. I'm going to be honest and say that I have no idea what goes into being a producer on a big budget Hollywood movie, so I can really only speak to these kind of small budget, small crew productions that we do at Light Focus. And even though it doesn't look fancy and it's just a small crew of 4, Mona consistently turns out these award-winning productions, and they air all over the world. I think that's pretty impressive. With such a small group, everyone has a job to do, and everyone has to pull their own weight and really be a team player also. Mona is the expert executive producer and question asker. Aaron handles all the visuals, and Dan handled all the sound on this one. On all the other shoots that I worked on, we also had a second camera and videographer, but not on this particular one. And then me. My role as producer encompasses a bunch of different tasks, and many of them start before we even touch down in the city that we're filming in. I handle a lot of the logistics, like finding the locations we'll be shooting in, and for intimate stories like this that are really personal, it can be nice to film in someone's home like we did for Joy. Now we're moving on to our second location, which is actually an equestrian therapy riding center that Dawn's mother, Cheryl, who you'll see later in the video for the final interview, started when Dawn was murdered by her ex-husband. But most of the time we interview people in their offices or their home because that's the natural environment, and it's really nice to capture the B-roll of them that fits with the story and shows their everyday life and setting. Another job that I do as producer is handle the shoot schedule, which has all the call times for the crew, the locations we're filming at, the hotel information, a general timeline, phone numbers for everyone involved, and even what restaurant we're going to be eating at. I book the flights, the rental cars, the equipment. I book the crew and make sure everything is in place, and then when we arrive, I am in full support mode. I help bring in equipment, order lunch, take production photos, take notes, share ideas, and make sure that everyone has whatever they need, like food. Food is so important to keep everyone happy and working on long days. That's a bit about producing. There's so much more I would love to share, but I want to get back to the story we're shooting today. This was our second shoot day, the last day, and we're at Agape Therapeutic Riding Center in Cicero, Indiana. Cheryl Miller and her daughter Dawn were called to share unconditional love when they expanded their enjoyment for horses and love of children by developing a summer riding program for children with disabilities. Cheryl and Dawn founded Agape in 1986, but they continued their dream of having a year-round program, and that dream became a reality following Dawn's tragic death in 1992, which I told you about. And then Cheryl purchased the property here and started a year-round program to help children and adults with disabilities, trauma, and more. It was amazing being here. It is a beautiful place, even though I am severely allergic to horses. Thank God for Zyrtec. And it was very sobering listening to Cheryl recount the day that she was shot in the hip and the head, and Dawn pleaded for her life and was murdered, and then the ex-husband kidnapped their son and left. I very, very much want to share the full clip of her interview from Aaron's camera with the good sound on here one day. I was sobbing silently in the background listening. The husband shot himself, and Cheryl and her husband adopted Dawn's son, and they raised him as their own. It is a very sad and heavy story, but also one that is so full of faith and hope. I was truly convicted listening to Cheryl share her faith in such a dark time, wondering if I have faith that is that strong and unshakable. It can be really intense to listen to people's saddest and darkest moments, but it's really an honor to be let in and to hear people being vulnerable and brave. It is one of the best parts about being a producer. I only have my camera's audio, and I was standing a good distance away having an allergy attack, but I want to share a clip of the interview anyway so you can hear a bit of Cheryl's story, just because it's so amazing.
Fell down, and I started toward them, and he reached under his jacket, he pulled out a gun, and he fired. I felt the bullet hit me. I felt it go through me. I didn't even feel falling on the floor. I was on the floor, and then he was standing over me with the gun pointed at my head. Dawn said, "Bill, you shot my mom. Let me get her help for her." And he said, "No, you're not gonna get help." I said, "Bill, God loves you, and I forgive you. Please don't do anymore." And he said, "I don't care about your God. I don't care about your Jesus. I want you to suffer." The only thing I could do was pray. And I began praying out loud, and he fired the gun. I felt the bullet, and I was face down, but I could hear everything going on. And Dawn kept crying and saying, "Bill, let me get help from my mom. Please let me get help from my mom. I'll do anything you say." I heard him fire the gun. I heard her fall to the floor. I heard him walk over to her and then fire the gun again. And by this point, their baby, who is asleep in the loft bedroom just above where all this took place, this was 2 weeks before his first birthday, was crying. He was screaming. Bill went up to get him. He came down the steps and walked out the front door and closed the door behind him. I can't let him leave with our baby, and I've got to get help for Dawn. And I just stood up, and he was right outside the door, and we were face to face looking at each other. He looked very pale at that point, like, this can't happen. I just shot this lady once in the abdomen, once in the head. How can she be standing? He grabbed the doorknob to come back in. The only way that door is locked is if you purposely turn the dial on it before you go out. I don't think he did that, but I know God did, because he couldn't come back in. He left.
It was a powerful interview and one of the most emotional I've ever been to date. One thing that Cheryl said that moved me really deeply was when she woke up in the hospital and learned that Dawn was dead, she started praising God. She felt an overwhelming sense of peace and joy, she said, because she knew that her daughter would never know fear or pain from her abuser her ever again. He could never stalk her or torment her or hit her ever again, and she was completely free to be loved unconditionally like she so badly wanted here on earth. I was baffled listening to that, and I felt a mixture of emotions, and it's something I wrestle with because it's hard to process. Listening to stories like this can help you be more empathetic and thoughtful because other people have such unique experiences and points of view to consider. I wish I had time to tell you about all the other great interviews you saw happening in this video, but I guess you'll have to watch the series on PBS, hopefully this year. I will be going to Chicago soon to start the scripting phase, so maybe I'll bring you along for that too. Anyway, I hate to end on a kind of sad note, but I do want to thank you for watching. I hope you learned a bit about what a documentary producer does and got to see some cool behind the scenes footage. There's really so much more to it. I didn't even scratch the surface of B-roll and different kinds of shots. So if this is something you enjoy, comment below and maybe I can do a follow-up. I really appreciate you being here, and I would love it if you subscribed and stuck around. I will see you next time here on It Came From a Vlog.